The crystal glasses shimmered beneath the bright afternoon sun pouring through the towering windows of the Grand Ashford Ballroom. Nearly 200 of the city's wealthiest executives, investors, and entrepreneurs filled the room, dressed in tailored suits and elegant gowns, laughing beneath sparkling chandeliers while cameras flashed from every corner. Then, in one cruel moment, silence shattered into humiliation. A waiter carrying a tray of expensive red wine stumbled, or so everyone believed, and the entire tray crashed over a quiet man standing alone near the entrance. Deep crimson wine soaked his faded gray suit from shoulder to shoes. Laughter erupted across the ballroom. Phones lifted to capture the embarrassing moment. Some whispered that he clearly didn't belong at an event reserved for the elite. No one imagined that within the next hour, those same people would discover that the man they had mocked controlled the approval of the billion-dollar business deal every executive in that room desperately wanted. Before we continue this unforgettable story, if you believe kindness is more valuable than appearances and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales. Your support helps us continue bringing emotional stories that remind us to see the humanity in others. The man's name was Adrian Mercer, a 48-year-old entrepreneur whose life had never been defined by luxury despite his extraordinary success. Unlike many billionaires who surrounded themselves with security teams and expensive watches, Adrian preferred simple clothes, drove an aging sedan, and traveled without drawing attention. His company specialized in sustainable infrastructure investments, quietly funding projects that transformed struggling communities while producing enormous returns. His philosophy had always been simple. Respect should be earned through character, not displayed through wealth. Few people recognized Adrian because he rarely appeared in magazines or television interviews. Whenever journalists requested photographs, he politely declined, insisting that attention belonged to the engineers, workers, and families who benefited from his investments rather than himself. This humility made him almost invisible in elite business circles where appearance often mattered more than integrity. The Grand Ashford Charity Investment Gala had attracted the nation's biggest corporate leaders. Officially, the event celebrated innovation and philanthropy, but everyone knew the true reason for attending. Meridian Holdings was seeking final approval for a $1 billion infrastructure partnership, and Adrian's private investment group owned the deciding stake. Most executives expected Adrian to arrive later aboard a luxury limousine surrounded by assistants. Instead, he had quietly entered through the main doors after parking his own car several blocks away. Earlier that afternoon, Adrian had stopped to help an elderly man whose wheelchair had become stuck near a sidewalk construction site. By the time he finished assisting the stranger and making sure he reached safety, his jacket had gathered dust and his polished shoes carried faint scratches. He smiled anyway, believing there was never a wrong time to help another human being. As Adrian entered the ballroom, few people acknowledged him. Reception staff glanced briefly at his invitation before pointing him toward the main hall without a greeting. Several guests assumed he was an accountant, consultant, or perhaps someone invited by mistake. None bothered introducing themselves. Near the center of the room stood Vincent Holloway, Meridian Holdings' ambitious chief executive. Vincent had built his reputation on aggressive negotiations and flawless public appearances. Every movement was carefully calculated to impress investors. Standing beside him was his glamorous public relations director, Celeste Rowan, whose polished smile rarely reached her eyes. Together they represented everything Adrian quietly disliked about modern corporate culture. When Adrian walked past them, Vincent barely concealed a smirk after noticing the worn fabric of Adrian's suit. Celeste whispered something that made several nearby executives laugh softly. Adrian heard nothing clearly, but he recognized the familiar expression of people judging someone before learning their story. Moments later came the accident. A young waiter hurried through the crowded ballroom carrying a silver tray loaded with crystal glasses filled with deep red wine. Someone abruptly stepped backward into his path. The tray tilted violently before crashing against Adrian's chest. Wine splashed across his face, jacket, trousers, and shoes while shattered glass scattered across the marble floor. The room froze for only a heartbeat before scattered laughter spread like wildfire. Some guests covered their mouths while recording videos. Others openly laughed as Adrian stood motionless, soaked and stained. Instead of helping, Vincent casually remarked loud enough for nearby guests to hear that perhaps invitations should include a dress code people could actually afford. More laughter followed. Celeste offered Adrian a napkin with exaggerated pity before walking away without waiting for him to accept it. The young waiter, whose name was Noah Ellis, looked horrified. Barely 22 years old and working 2 jobs to support his widowed mother, Noah immediately knelt to apologize while trembling with fear. Adrian gently helped him stand, reassuring him that accidents happened and asking whether he had been injured by the broken glass. Noah expected anger but found only compassion. That single act of kindness was noticed by very few people. Adrian quietly excused himself to the restroom where he cleaned as much wine as possible from his clothing. Looking into the mirror, he sighed not because his suit was ruined but because the afternoon had revealed exactly how easily successful people forgot basic human decency. Returning to the ballroom, Adrian found an empty seat near the back while conversations continued as though nothing had happened. No one invited him to join their tables. Several attendees deliberately avoided eye contact. Soon the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage to announce the highlight of the afternoon. Meridian Holdings would officially present its vision before introducing the mysterious investor whose approval would unlock $1 billion in funding. Excitement filled the ballroom. Vincent confidently delivered an impressive presentation filled with dazzling graphics, ambitious promises, and carefully rehearsed optimism. The audience applauded enthusiastically as he concluded by saying their future depended on earning the trust of one remarkable individual whose commitment to ethical investment inspired the entire industry. Then the host smiled toward the audience. "Everyone, please welcome the founder of Mercer Global Investments, Mr. Adrian Mercer." Silence crashed across the ballroom harder than the shattered wine glasses earlier. Every face slowly turned toward the quiet man sitting alone near the back. Adrian calmly stood. The same stained gray suit remained covered with dried crimson streaks. No cameras flashed now. No laughter remained. Vincent's confident smile disappeared completely. Celeste's face turned pale. Several executives who had ignored Adrian suddenly straightened in their seats, realizing they had spent the afternoon dismissing the very person holding their future. Adrian walked toward the stage with steady steps. The room remained painfully silent except for the sound of his shoes crossing the marble floor. Accepting the microphone, Adrian looked across the audience without anger. His expression carried sadness more than resentment. He spoke about his childhood in a small town where his father repaired farm equipment and his mother worked as a school librarian. They had taught him that respect was the only currency that never lost value. Throughout his career, he had invested in companies that treated workers with dignity because financial success built without compassion eventually collapsed under its own weight. He gently explained that before every major partnership, he preferred attending events anonymously because presentations revealed only business strategies, while ordinary interactions revealed corporate character. He admitted that the wine spilling onto his suit had been an accident. What happened afterward had not been. He described how laughter had replaced empathy, how assumptions had replaced introductions, and how a frightened young waiter had been left alone to carry everyone's embarrassment until one simple act of kindness reminded him that humanity still existed. Many guests lowered their eyes. Vincent shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Adrian continued by explaining that billion-dollar investments were never simply about numbers. They represented schools, hospitals, roads, clean water systems, and thousands of families depending on responsible leadership. A company capable of humiliating strangers in public could easily overlook communities in private. The ballroom felt unbearably heavy. Then Adrian did something no one expected. Rather than announcing immediate rejection, he invited Noah, the young waiter, onto the stage. The nervous waiter hesitated before slowly approaching. Adrian publicly thanked Noah for caring more about another person's well-being than protecting his own job. He announced that Mercer Global Investments would personally fund Noah's university education, allowing him to pursue the engineering degree he had postponed because of financial hardship. Tears filled Noah's eyes. Many guests quietly wiped away their own. Finally, Adrian turned toward Vincent. He explained that leadership was measured most clearly during moments when no one believed consequences existed. The investment agreement would not proceed that afternoon. Instead, Meridian Holdings would be given 6 months to demonstrate meaningful cultural reform, employee respect initiatives, and measurable community engagement. Only then would Mercer Global reconsider the partnership. For Vincent, the announcement felt devastating. Yet Adrian was not seeking revenge. He was offering accountability. Over the following months, the story spread across business publications, not because of the spilled wine but because of the lesson that followed. Companies across the country began reviewing workplace culture, customer treatment, and leadership ethics. Managers who once ignored junior employees started listening. Executives who chased profit above everything else slowly realized that reputation could not be purchased after compassion had been lost. Vincent himself experienced profound change. Public embarrassment forced him to confront years of arrogance. He visited employees at every level of the company, apologized personally to many people he had overlooked, and introduced policies focused on fairness, education, and community investment. The transformation was slow, difficult, and often uncomfortable, but it was genuine. 6 months later, Adrian returned to Meridian's headquarters wearing another simple gray suit. This time, every employee from reception to senior management greeted him warmly. No one commented on his clothing. Everyone remembered his character. After carefully reviewing the company's progress, Adrian approved the billion-dollar partnership, explaining that real success belonged to those willing to become better people rather than simply richer ones. Years later, Noah graduated as an engineer with highest honors. He eventually led several sustainable infrastructure projects funded through the very partnership born from that unforgettable afternoon. Whenever reporters asked how his career began, he never mentioned luck. He spoke about one man who chose forgiveness over pride and compassion over humiliation. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that true greatness is shown through kindness rather than wealth, please like this video, share it with someone who needs this message today, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales so we can continue sharing stories that inspire hope.